Thank you so much. It's always an honor to be here. You know, my connection with this organization goes back to 2004 when Linda stopped me as we were both eating plates of sushi in Tokyo at an asbestos meeting and told me about the organization, and that was my introduction to what she and Doug were doing. And it's truly an honor today to speak on the life and legacy of Dr. Selikoff and comment on his science and prevention activities. My dear friend Dick Lemon covered some of what I was going to speak about, so we'll modify some of our comments. But some background about Dr. Selikoff, and I started with him in 1968 and got to know him. I was a first-year medical student at Mount Sinai. I learned that over the years, Dr. Selikoff had to go out of the country to get his medical degree. There was still anti-Semitism when he was graduating from college. He went to Columbia University. It was actually something that lasted even to the era when I was headed off to college in the 60s. But he ended up going to Edinburgh. It was during the war, and so a year was spent in Australia. He came back, got his degree. And it's interesting, in this very building, a former member of the safety department who's actually living in the neighborhood, who has kept Dr. Selikoff's legacy and papers alive, and documented when he was attacked that he never went to medical school and got a degree that he actually did. So he had to put up with a lot, as many of us that have tried to pick up this fight have had to do. His first major contribution, as you heard, was in the world of tuberculosis. He actually won the Lasker Award with some colleagues for the development of isoniazid, the very successful antibiotic to treat the disease. And as you heard from Dick Lemon, he got into the asbestos work through his activities at the Patterson Clinic. Now that was also groundbreaking because the Patterson Clinic was one of the very first prepaid membership-driven clinical settings. They had like 30,000 people. It was a multi-specialty clinic. The AMA was upset about it. Other doctors were upset about it because in those days there was still a fee-for-service model, and this prepaid medical model was very different. They tried taking him to court. They tried breaking the clinic up. They were unsuccessful. And it was actually that clinic that we would often go to as a team out of Mount Sinai and visit and examine workers who had worked at the UNARCO plant in Patterson and their family members. So that was another sort of groundbreaking aspect. The family member activities was, again, something that he undertook, and our Selikoff awardee later today, Dr. Henry Anderson, was instrumental in taking on that piece of research and has had some wonderful papers published in the scientific literature heading up that part of the study. Dr. Selikoff would have his junior colleagues take on bits and pieces to help with their training. And Andy did a lot of work with family studies. As you heard, he also joined at Mount Sinai. He established something called the Environmental Sciences Laboratory, which was remarkable in that he pulled together groups of scientists that were untraditional for medical school settings. Not only were there physicians like himself, and he attracted other occupational physicians, but Dr. Suzuki was a pathologist who he worked with, who had done some of the earliest work, first in Japan, on electron microscopy. There was an EM that Dr. Suzuki had at the Environmental Sciences Lab and made major contributions in that arena. But there were also industrial hygienists, there were mineralogists and others in the group, all contributing to the world of asbestos science that Dr. Selikoff was heading. As part of his activities, he also, while there, started two important scientific journals. He started the American Journal of Industrial Medicine, still active and functioning journal. Again, some of the people that are here, Steve Markowitz has been on the editorial board. I was asked to join that years ago and still active with that, published my most recent paper there. It's a fine journal in our field. He also started the journal Environmental Research, which was a bit broader in terms of its scope, and that's a journal that continues today. Dr. Selikoff also had a major connection with the New York Academy of Sciences, distinguished body in New York, the largest scientific organization in terms of membership, I believe, in the world, with members all over the world. He was president and then became what was called an honorary life governor, so he was connected to that organization until he passed away. And through the New York Academy of Sciences, held 3 very important conferences on asbestos in 1964, in 1979, and the last one in 1991, shortly before he passed away. So he left a legacy of major publications. As I said, I met him as a first-year medical student in 1968 and was taken by his presence and his work. And then, as they say in the Godfather movie, he made me an offer I couldn't refuse. He said, "I'll sponsor you for a PhD to go along with your medical degree." And so I ended up not only joining the first class at Mount Sinai when it opened in '68, but ended up becoming the first MD PhD under his supervision. And as I mentioned, with colleagues that I met last night from the American Cancer Society, Kyler Hammond, who was a major co-author with Dr. Selikoff. He was with the ACS, and ACS was a big supporter of Dr. Selikoff's work. And Kyler Hammond was a member of my committee. So there are all kinds of connections. Dr. Selikoff was also important in terms of international work. With Cesare Maltoni in Italy, he started the Collegium Ramazzini. We're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year at the Collegium. There are a number of Collegium members here in the audience. And I had the honor of being elected into the first class when they elected members, fellows of that organization. And that's an ongoing activity that has been vital in putting out honest information about asbestos. Dr. Selikoff was also well connected to politicians, testified in Congress, was a member of the Cancer Board, the Cancer NCI. He also got, in those days it was still HEW before it became HHS and Education, separate entities, and got an insert with Social Security checks once that anybody who'd worked in a shipyard in World War II should be made aware of potential exposures to asbestos. And I just want to finish up that his legacy is not only in terms of the science that he produced. He was a master at putting out information into the public, but his legacy continues even years, decades after his passing, because there are many of us in this room that were trained by him or educated by him, and so the legacy carries on with those of us who went through Mount Sinai and the experience with Dr. Selikoff. So that's a bit of a background that some of you may or may not have known. So thank you for the opportunity to be here and share some of those thoughts with you.